So many people who come to me wanting help finding the right franchise don't want to own and operate one business forever. They want to build an empire, and they view franchising as the vehicle to make that happen. But here's what most people don't realize. There are actually two completely different ways to build a franchise empire: horizontal growth and vertical growth. The path that you choose could be the difference between a profitable exit and getting stuck managing a complicated mess of businesses. So in this video, I'll break down both strategies and help you determine which empire building approach makes the most sense for you and your goals. And if you're new here, my name is Connor Gross. I'm a franchise owner and a franchise consultant who helps entrepreneurs and investors to find the right franchise for them. For access to my library of franchise breakdowns and free resources, click the link in the description. So let's start by talking about horizontal growth, which means that you're sticking with one franchise brand, but you're expanding into many different markets. And that could be different markets across your region, across the country, or even globally, depending on the scale. And this often happens through acquisition in what's called a traditional roll-up play, which means you're acquiring related businesses to build scale. A lot of people want to buy businesses these days. It's really the trendy new way to get into business ownership. I've been very clear about this. I do not believe that there's a better opportunity to create value in small business acquisitions than there is in franchising today, and that is through horizontal growth. And this is because you're in a superior position for three critical components of M&A, and that is deal sourcing, which is finding deals; it is diligence, which is underwriting, evaluating deals; and integration, which is combining the businesses after the businesses have been acquired. So let's take those one by one. From a deal sourcing standpoint, which is an in deal sourcing and outside of deal sourcing, an under-discussed piece of value that you get being in a franchise system is the network, because you're doing business alongside of many times hundreds of other franchisees who are operating the same business that you are within that brand. So you build relationships organically because you're learning from each other and you're growing together. If you're trying to source opportunities to buy other people's businesses, when you establish yourself as a buyer in this network, you create inbound deal flow. So when people want to sell, they know that you're somebody who wants to buy, and you're inclined to get first dibs on those opportunities. And then in addition to that, you have all of the data and all of the contact information for everyone who owns every franchise location in that system, and you can reach out to them directly if you want to. So that's deal sourcing. Now let's talk about diligence. So you're in a much better position to conduct accurate diligence on a business because you run the same business in the same system. You know the systems, you understand what levers need to be pulled for growth, and you're familiar with the tech stack. So you can ask the seller for their CRM and immediately understand what you're looking at because you use the same system in your business today. So you know where the bodies are buried in that business, and you also know where the treasure is buried. And so this insider knowledge makes your underwriting far more accurate and efficient than an outside buyer who's trying to evaluate an unfamiliar business. And then let's talk about integration, which again is the process of putting these businesses together so that they can function as one. So when you acquire another franchise in your system, you're buying a business that is operating again under the same brand name, with the same tech stack, same system, same marketing, same core values, a lot of times the same culture. Integration becomes much simpler because you're primarily integrating personnel and finances, which are not easy, but when you limit it to that, it makes it a lot simpler. And so if you're thinking about it from a return on hassle standpoint, is what I call it, this makes smaller acquisitions more viable and more productive because you can efficiently build scale without the complexity of integrating completely different operating systems. That's a quick rundown of horizontal growth. So now let's talk about vertical growth, which is the inverse. That means that you're sticking within one market and you're getting into multiple franchise brands, stacking multiple brands on top of each other. This is more of a traditional holdco or holding company play, which is where you're wanting to build a portfolio of different businesses. And franchising gives you advantages in building a holdco as well because of the existing structure. Just as an example, with the franchises that I own, I don't have to attend industry conferences in these industries because the franchisors are who is keeping their eyes on many of the macro trends and stewarding the brand in that way. I focus on the four walls of my business. And so that involves keeping the right people in the right seats, the processes, the budgets, the marketing, etc. But the point is, this internal focus expedites your path towards being able to have your hands in different businesses without losing your mind over it. When you're going to execute a vertical growth strategy, the first thing you have to decide is whether you're going to prioritize synergy or diversification, because a lot of times those two things are going to be at odds with each other. So synergy just means that you own multiple different businesses that support each other. These are typically going to be more industry adjacent businesses, and you can capture value in three main ways, and that's personnel, real estate, and marketing. So taking those one by one, personnel, it might be where you're sharing managers across different brands. So maybe in a brick and mortar concept, you own two different brick and mortar franchises. You might have a manager in each location, but the area manager or the regional manager, whoever the upper level of management is, they might be able to manage managers across multiple different brands if they're similar operations, employing similar types of people and serving similar types of customers. You may see this in sales. I see this a lot in the high ticket service businesses that I really like these days. Selling a roof and selling a fence is pretty similar. Obviously, there are specific things you have to know about each one of those services. The follow-up process, the lead flow, the sales funnel is going to look pretty similar. They're selling to similar customers, so there might be some crossover there. Another area you see this is in the seasonal businesses. One of the franchises that I own does holiday lighting, and some of my fellow franchisees in that brand own mosquito control businesses. And they own that because by the time mosquito control winds down around October, their crews, their field team, transitions to their holiday lighting business and starts hanging holiday lights. So those are the different ways that synergenic brands, you can capture that value through personnel. Now let's talk about real estate. This is going to be predominantly in non-brick and mortar businesses, which are businesses where you go to the customer instead of brick and mortar businesses where the customer is coming to you. In a non-brick and mortar businesses, typically a service business, you may be able to operate multiple franchises out of the same piece of real estate, out of the same space. And so you're offsetting rent. There might be other synergies through being able to use the same tools and equipment. That may be another area where you capture synergy. And then when it comes to marketing, if you're operating multiple franchises that serve a similar customer base, there may be cross-marketing opportunities where you can sell multiple services to the same customer base. You have to check to make sure that this is compliant with the franchisor's brand standards, because a lot of times franchise brands don't want to be co-branded with brands that they're not familiar with, but provided that it is synergenic and it's not competitive, franchisors likely would be inclined to be supportive of that. That is synergy. Now let's talk about diversification. And diversification means that you're acquiring completely unrelated businesses that have no synergy. Example I've talked about before, I got my start in franchising because I was working for an ownership group in boutique fitness, and they wanted to diversify into home services. And I partnered with them, and we opened a home service franchise together in 2019. There was no synergy between boutique fitness and home services, none. But that wasn't the point. The point was they wanted to utilize the muscles they had built in franchising to gain exposure to different industries and spread the risk across unrelated sectors, so that if one sector took a hit, the other was not impacted. And we started this home service franchise in 2019. If you'll recall, 2020 was not a very good year for the fitness industry, so that ended up being very good intuition on their part from a diversification standpoint. Between horizontal growth and vertical growth, let's talk about how you determine which path is for you, because I think that both paths can be successful, both have their place. But a few of the variables to think about. First of all would be your time horizon and your exit goals. So if you have a shorter time horizon, you're trying to, grow something more quickly and have an exit more quickly, then horizontal growth is more likely to make sense, because when it comes time to sell, you have a more straightforward path to finding a buyer, because you are only going to own one brand, and so you only need a buyer to get their head wrapped around and be bullish around one opportunity, and you can offer them holdings in multiple geographies within that opportunity. Vertical growth is going to make more sense for people who have longer time horizons and likely are not thinking about an exit in the near term. This works better if you have an evergreen investment, if you want to have an evergreen investment, which is a longer term investment that you plan to hold for the long haul, and your exit strategy is likely going to be divesting those different holdings at different times. The other thing to think about is travel comfort. How comfortable are you with traveling? Because obviously, if you don't want to travel, that just doesn't fit neatly into your life, that's totally fine. But a horizontal path to scale may not make sense if you're getting in regions that are a heck of a commute. That's where vertical growth could make more sense, because you're stacking multiple opportunities within the same area. And then the other thing about this is that I work with people all the time that are very, very rooted in their local community. They want to serve their community, and they have connections that if they went outside of their community, they wouldn't have that same advantage. And so they pursue vertical growth because they want to scale, but they want to scale deeper and not wider. So that can make a lot of sense too. And then the other thing to think about is how comfortable are you with the complexity that comes with owning multiple different businesses in different brands? So are you somebody that likes having your hands in multiple different things, or do you think that would be paralyzing for you? So if you're concerned about managing that complexity and would rather stay focused on one business model, that's where horizontal growth is going to make sense. But if you enjoyed variety and you like the idea of managing different types of businesses, then vertical growth might make more sense. So like I said, I think both of these have their paths, but I do want to share a mistake that I made and hopefully can help you avoid making the same mistake. But I started my first franchise, like I mentioned, in 2019 in home services in North Carolina. And when I bought my second franchise in 2022, I picked a completely different brand, different business model in a completely different market in the Midwest. While both made sense in different respects, this left me with two completely different franchise brands in two completely different markets. And because you're going to face friction whenever you get into either a different market or a different brand, I wish that I had picked one or the other rather than confronting both of those things at the same time. And so don't make this mistake. I would choose either horizontal growth or vertical growth, but don't accidentally end up with the worst of both worlds. Both horizontal growth and vertical growth can be successful paths to building a franchise empire, but the right choice depends on your goals, your timeline, and your preferences. So whether you want to dominate one brand across multiple markets or build a diversified portfolio in your local area, the key is being intentional about your strategy and sticking to it. If you want to build a franchise empire and want to take advantage of all the many mistakes that I've already made, which I'm always happy to share, click the link in the description to book a one-on-one strategy call with me to get started. And as always, please like this video, subscribe to this channel, and leave a comment letting me know what franchise topic you would like to hear about next.